Friday, February 24. Ellen White writes in Education, page 145, "No scheme of business or plan of life can be sound or complete that embraces only the brief years of this present life and makes no provision for the unending future. No man can lay up treasure in heaven without finding his life on earth thereby enriched and ennobled." End of quote. And from the same book, page 137, "That which lies at the foundation of business integrity and of true success is the recognition of God's ownership. The Creator of all things, He is the original proprietor. We are His stewards. All that we have is a trust from Him to be used according to His direction." End of quote. Because of the pressure to provide for our families, many times we think that our work is simply to provide an income. But as Christians, we also face doing our part in the Great Commission that Jesus gave to all his followers. After quoting this commission as found in Mark 16:15, Ellen White wrote, before we read what she wrote, let's read that commission in Mark 16:15. "And he said to them, Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." Now the quote, "Not all are called to be ministers or missionaries in the ordinary sense of the term, but all may be workers with him in giving the glad tidings to their fellow men. To all, great or small, learned or ignorant, old or young, the command is given." And that's from Education, page 264. And from the same book, page 267, we read, "We need to follow more closely God's plan of life, to do our best in the work that lies nearest, to commit our ways to God, and to watch for the indications of his providence. These are rules that ensure safe guidance in the choice of an occupation." And that brings us to our two discussion questions for this week. 1. How do we as Christians define what a successful life is? What might the difference be between what the world defines as success and what we ideally should? Take, for instance, John the Baptist. How would you define his life, which ended ignobly in a prison, all based on the whim of an evil woman? Would you call it successful? What reasons can you give for your answer? And 2. How do we explain the fact that there are many very successful people who follow none of the biblical principles about wealth management or life in general? Or what about those who try to follow them and nevertheless don't succeed? Perhaps they get sick or calamity strikes. How are we to understand these situations? And now it's time for our mission story for this week, read by my niece Sibylla, who, like me, is also a volunteer. Thank you, Sibylla.
The Cat and the Colporteur by Andrew McChesney. Young literature evangelist Simo Vekavuri stopped at a well-kept house near Turkuru, Finland's oldest city and former capital, in the middle of winter, and showed his books to two unmarried sisters who lived there. To his surprise, the sisters quickly ordered a copy of every book. Then they left him standing alone in the living room. He did not dare leave. Finally, one of the sisters came downstairs with a big cat tucked under her arm. "Mister, aren't you going to do anything to this cat?" she asked. "What should I do?" Simo asked. "Aren't you the vet whom we just called?" she said. "No," he said, "I'm a literary evangelist." For years afterwards, the sisters told their friends with peals of laughter about how they had mistaken Simo for a vet and thought that they had to buy his books in order for him to treat their cat. The sisters kept the books. On another occasion, Simo went to a forest to eat lunch and pray on a Friday afternoon. "Before this week ends, Jesus, give me an opportunity to witness for you," he prayed. After eating, he knocked on the door of a farmhouse. "I'm selling this book," he said, holding out a copy of Ellen White's The Great Controversy, to the woman who opened the door. "I'm not at all interested in the book that you are selling," the woman replied, "but I would like to hear what Jesus means to you." After Simo described his love for Jesus, the woman spoke. "Let's go to the back room and pray on our knees together," she said. At that moment, her adult daughter came to the door. "Join us," the woman told her daughter. "Your knees need to be bent in prayer too." After praying, Simo prepared to leave. The woman followed him out the door. "I'd like to order the book that you showed me," she said. It was then that Simo realized that the woman had an interest in spiritual matters. When a pastor started evangelistic meetings in the area some time later, Simo introduced him to the family. The pastor held Bible studies in the farmhouse, and the family joined the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Today, the woman's granddaughter is an active church leader in Finland's capital, Helsinki. This mission story illustrates spiritual growth objective number 5 of the Seventh-day Adventist Church's I Will Go strategic plan. To disciple individuals and families into spirit-filled lives, read more on iwillgo2020.org and read more about Simo next week.
This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful. And here is a disclaimer. Contents of these lessons are not intended to be financial advice, but is general commentary based on biblical principles. The reader is encouraged to seek competent professional advice which will suit their particular personal situation.